Joshua Kitts, the director of the Composed Dream Game Marketplace. And today I want to do something a little different, something we haven't done before. I want to do a bit of an after-action report from going to a convention. This past weekend I was at Phantasm, which recently celebrated its 30th anniversary. So I was very happy to be there. There's the shirt in its full glory. I've been going to Phantasm for years. It's one of my favorite small, very RPG-focused conventions in Peterborough, Ontario. And we had a booth. I ran some games. I'm going to get into discussing how those things went. So we were at Phantasm. I was signed up to run 3 sessions. It was a one-day con. Normally it is 2 days, but given the circumstances, we knew there would be less people attending, and it was easier to organize just the one day. We had a booth. It had a lovely array of games, some of which are above me. We had just added Pendelhaven, which has some designers who are from the Peterborough area originally, or certainly I met there originally. So I may show a picture or two of the booth here or here, and some of the other titles we had there. Response was very positive. Lots of folks thought that it was wonderful that there was such a diversity of Canadian-made role-playing games all present at one table. So, I also had very good chats with many of the other people in the booths, and we ran a few games. Other vendors, I was going to say. So, what did I run at 2021 Phantasm in October? Well, first we were doing some demos. Mostly that just ended up being a demo of The Quiet Year. So we played a short game, maybe 45 minutes of The Quiet Year. I pulled out a long piece of paper and some pencils, and we drew our settlement on the map. We quickly decided that it was a salt marsh location with rusty old weapons and bunkers, and we had an excess of salt, and we were missing trees, or we were missing short on wood, and our food had just spoiled, so all of our stored fish had spoiled. So we were in pretty dire straits at the beginning of this. It went swimmingly as nobody went swimming because they would have gotten eaten by crocodiles in the marsh or attacked by hippos. So we quickly ended up with a faction representing the children of the community who would normally have been hunting small game, and a faction representing the raft makers who made their rafts out of reeds, and a faction, I forget the last one. And we were all set to have a war with the vicious tree people who had access to trees and wood, and we wanted it. But there was conflict in the community over that. So, of course, there were some contempt tokens that were taken and so forth. I have had a video about The Quiet Year before. I'll link to that, so if you do want to watch that, you can. But it is a lovely GM-less map-making story game, which you can just sit down and play with zero preparation whatsoever. In the afternoon, I ran a session of Simple Superheroes, my RPG, the one I designed. This was the Dream King of Artifice City, so it was set in 1953. Artifice City, a city in Manitoba that doesn't exist, of course, on the Lake Winnipeg or Lake Manitoba. And it was very memorable. It was very memorable. I think all the players had a very good time. We started out kind of absurd with a knight robbing a bank and declaring that it was tribute for the king, which everybody puzzled about for a moment. And then, of course, no, the queen was coronated recently. It's 1953. We had a character named Silhouette who was a shadow and managed to pull a child out of the night, and the vision, it turned out to be a dream awoken by the Dream King of Artifice City. So we pulled this kid out, and they started figuring out what was going on. There was a altercation at a park where apparently this child's dream had been awoken, and with a famous hockey player, Silhouette got dragged into a sort of pocket dimension trap, which left Chimera and Baker, who could make about a dozen copies of himself, and was in fact the owner of a bakery, who had twins. They had an altercation with this hockey player, and then again, eventually, they were able to awaken this middle-aged, rather pudgy man from his dream of being one of the most, the greatest forwards of all time. They met the Dream King in a pie shop, eventually. They tracked him down there, and there was a philosophical discussion, which I enjoyed quite a bit, and I think the players did too, about what he was doing and why, and so on. Eventually, Chimera decided to sit back from most of this and not engage. Baker was being very much the upstanding superhero. Silhouette seemed to be fairly against this until the Dream King awakened his dream of becoming a real person again, whereupon he immediately went and reunited with his family in an incredibly touching scene. While that was happening, Baker and the Dream King went out inside into the alley and had, or into the street, and had a battle where Baker cleverly chose to use some very 1950s-ish comic book logic and get some dream catchers. So he had a bunch of dream catchers, and this allowed him to capture the Dream King. Things rounded off with a battle against a giant who was made up of many, many dreaming characters or individuals at once, and the Dream King escaping from prison. It was wonderful. I enjoyed everything that all the players did, and it was very memorable. I think the engine handled it very well as well, and it was very enjoyable. Now, everybody made their own characters at the beginning of this, as I always do with Simple Superheroes, so I had no idea what to expect in terms of what kind of powers everybody would have and what they would be able to do. Right. So, what was the last thing I ran? Well, I ran a session of First Edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, or OSRIC, if you prefer. I've got my player's handbook right here. My old original AD&D player's handbook. So we played this, and I, of course, haven't run a high-level AD&D campaign in a couple years anyway, so I made plenty of mistakes, but a good time was had by all. We ran for a little over 2.5 hours and we were playing the Aerie of the Cloud Giant Strategos. I made a video about this recently as well. You're welcome to check that out, but the very, very short version is that it is a possible sequel to the original Against the Giants module. So characters played the players, we had two tournament characters from the original module who had been leveled up just a little bit, and climbed a beanstalk, fought a giant, talked to a weird druid on the Cloud Castle, and invaded the Nepothanthos and managed, through some judicious use of invisibility and other things, to make their way to the Strategos this planning room, where they managed, incredibly, with only 2 characters, to kill the Strategos, and were immediately killed at the end of the same round. It was beautiful. You couldn't ask for more, as being only 2 characters, and I think that wrapped up the evening nicely. Spent a couple more hours at the con, at the booth. Folks were watching the original Dune movie, and I watched some of that for the very first time. Well, I might have seen some small excerpts from it, but never a significant amount of it, so that was enjoyable. They gave out the awards for the Hammer of the Plot for the best GM, and the player award I could never quite remember. If you are anywhere in the Phantasm area, so that's Peterborough, Ontario, I highly encourage you to come out. If what you really want to do is play a bunch of sessions of RPGs with some great GMs. Anything I've played there has always been helmed by a great GM and great players, and been a great experience. So I hope I'll see you at a Phantasm one of these years. They do generally do a spring and a fall event. If this has been of interest, I may try to do some more of these after-action reports, which just sort of summarize some games I've been playing and maybe what I learned from them. I learned, for instance, from this that I need to, if I'm running a very high-level AD&D adventure, I need to review a few things more. So I overlooked some spells. I overlooked a few other rules items. I know that, of course, the Quiet Year, which is actually, I think, it's definitely the first time I've run it at an event. I've played it a number of times, but it's definitely the first time I've run it at an event. You only need somebody who's a little familiar with the rules. It's quite easy to run off the cuff. If you have somebody who's a little familiar with the rules, it's like running a fairly straightforward board game. In terms of prep, or what you need to do ahead of time. You don't need to plan an adventure or anything. Simple Superheroes, I've run a ton, of course. It's my baby, so I mostly just enjoyed that. This is the first time I think I've run an Artifice City or a 1950s adventure at a convention. I ran some Artifice City scenario games earlier this year, just online, with some folks I know. So, looking forward to doing another Artifice City adventure sometime in the future. Alright, folks, I hope that's been of interest. If you are at all interested in supporting some Canadian RPG designers, please do head on over to composeddraingames.com/marketplace, where we have an array of titles available. I take only 10%, which is as reasonable as it gets. We also have some options for supporting local game stores, so we do have some ship-to-store options, which gives you discounted shipping, and we always encourage people to see if their local game stores are carrying any of our titles as well. Well, that's all for me. Perhaps I'll see you at a Phantasm. Good gaming.